It was supposed to be the proudest night of my life, my son's first big role in the school play. The auditorium was full, the lights were warm, and then a single glance, a whisper, and a message exposed everything. My wife's secret, his teacher, and my plan to reveal them all. My name is Daniel. I'm 38, a mid-level project manager who's always tried to be steady for my family. My wife, Claire, is a bright social woman who volunteers at our son Ethan's school. We've been married for 12 years. Not perfect, but I believed we were solid. The last few months, though, I'd sensed tiny changes. Claire texting late at night and quickly locking her phone, Ethan mentioning extra rehearsals for the play where she'd drive him and stay longer than necessary. I chalked it up to school play stress and my own overthinking. That Friday evening was supposed to be pure joy. Ethan had landed the lead in the school's spring production, a small-town auditorium transformed with cardboard scenery, paper, stars, and proud parents clutching bouquets. I took a half-day off work, bought him a little good luck gift, and even helped set up chairs. As people arrived, the hall buzzed with chatter. Teachers pinned last-minute props, parents took selfies, and kids peeked out from behind the curtains. Claire floated around, greeting everyone, clearly at ease, laughing with one of the teachers. At the time, I thought nothing of it, just her usual friendliness. The opening scene began. Lights dimmed, the curtain rose, and Ethan stepped on stage. His small voice steady and clear. My heart swelled with pride. I snapped photos, whispered, "That's my boy," to the couple sitting next to me. For a moment, everything felt right. But then, halfway through Act 1, I went to the lobby to get water. As I turned down a side corridor behind the stage, I heard a low laugh. Claire's laugh. I slowed, curious, then froze. Her voice, hushed, but unmistakable, said, "We just have to keep tonight low-key. After the show, we'll have time." A male voice answered, calm, confident, and then used a pet name I'd never heard before. I leaned slightly around the corner. There, in the dim light near the costume racks, stood Claire and Mr. Dalton, Ethan's English teacher and the play's director. He had his hand lightly on her arm, her face tilted up at him with a smile that made my stomach twist. It was intimate, practiced, not a sudden flirtation, but something that had been going on for a while. My pulse roared in my ears. In a flash, every odd late-night text, every extended rehearsal, every guarded glance made sense. My wife wasn't just volunteering, she was involved with our son's teacher, and tonight, of all nights, she felt safe enough to meet him in the shadows while our boy performed on stage. I stepped back quietly, gripping the water bottle so hard it crumpled in my hand. The urge to confront them burned hot in my chest, but Ethan's voice drifted from the stage, clear and bright, reminding me who really mattered. Not here, not now, I told myself. Not during his moment. So I forced a neutral expression, walked back into the auditorium, and sat down, clapping at the right moments, smiling at my son while a storm built behind my eyes. They thought I didn't know, but I did. And as the curtain fell on the first act, I began planning a reveal of my own. The applause at the end of Act 1 was thunderous, but inside me there was only a hollow echo. I clapped and smiled as Ethan bowed, the proud father mask fixed firmly on my face. Claire returned to our row just in time for the second act, cheeks flushed, whispering something about helping backstage. I nodded, said nothing, and kept my eyes on the stage while my mind churned. In that moment, I decided I would not explode in the middle of my son's play. He didn't deserve to see his family unravel in public. If there was going to be a confrontation, it would be planned, not a spectacle that stole his spotlight. But even as I smiled, 1,000 images crowded my head. Claire's secret texts, Mr. Dalton's easy confidence, their heads bent together backstage. I thought about all the years I'd supported Claire's hobbies, her volunteer work at the school, the weekends I stayed home with Ethan while she attended planning meetings. I had been proud of her energy. Now I saw it differently. She'd built a second life right under my nose, using the school as her cover. When the play ended, we filed out with the other parents. Ethan was glowing, clutching his bouquet. Claire hugged him, kissed his cheek, and told him how proud she was. I took a photo of them together, swallowing the bitter taste in my throat. Mr. Dalton appeared then, handing out congratulations, shaking hands. His eyes flicked to me once, quick, assessing, then slid away. We drove home together, Ethan asleep in the back seat, Claire humming softly. I asked about her backstage help, and she launched into a story about a missing prop, her tone bright and casual. I played along, nodded, smiled. I felt like an actor in my own life, reading lines someone else had written. That night, after Ethan was in bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. My hands hovered over the keys. Anger wanted me to fire off an email, call her out, demand answers. But another part of me, colder, steadier, whispered, "Gather facts first. If you move rashly, you'll only get half-truths and excuses. Build a picture she can't wriggle out of." So I started small. I checked our phone bill online, noting the frequent late-night numbers she texted. One stood out, an unlisted cell, but a quick search linked it to a prepaid plan purchased in Mr. Dalton's city. I printed the logs quietly, then I scrolled back through months of calendar entries. PTA meeting, costume fitting, extra rehearsal. Every one of them lined up with nights she'd come home late or distracted. Over the next week, while keeping up normal routines, breakfast, school runs, work, I began quietly documenting everything. Screenshots of texts she left open, receipts in her purse, emails about volunteer coordination that were actually hotel bookings near the school. Each piece I saved in a hidden folder labeled innocuously. It was painful work. Every new proof felt like a small cut. But it also cleared the fog. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern, deliberate and sustained. And most galling of all, she'd used our son's activities as camouflage. Meanwhile, at the school, Mr. Dalton kept up his polished image. He sent newsletters, organized rehearsals, posted cheerful updates on the parent portal. Claire liked every post, left enthusiastic comments. To anyone else, they looked like model collaborators. To me, it was a performance. Two actors playing parts while the real story played out in the wings. I also noticed something else. Mr. Dalton's contract was up for renewal at the end of the term. The school board was considering him for a permanent position. Claire had been campaigning subtly among the parents to support him. That gave me an idea. I scheduled a quiet meeting with a lawyer I trusted. Not our family lawyer, but someone discreet, recommended by a colleague. We met at a small coffee shop across town. I explained in careful, measured words what I'd discovered. The lawyer didn't flinch. He asked about assets, custody, documentation. He confirmed what I suspected. Infidelity could affect divorce proceedings, especially if it involved someone in a position of authority over our child. He also advised me on something I hadn't considered: the optics. A public explosion could traumatize Ethan and turn sympathy away from me. A controlled exposure, timed correctly, would not only protect my son, but also show the affair for what it was: a violation of trust involving a teacher. Leaving the cafe, I felt both heavier and lighter. Heavier with the knowledge of what lay ahead, lighter because I had a plan forming. It wasn't about revenge in the tabloid sense. It was about truth, timing, and dignity. At home, I kept my mask firmly in place. We had dinners, helped Ethan with homework, even watched a movie together. Claire would glance at me sometimes, a flicker of something in her eyes, guilt, suspicion, then look away. She was used to me being steady, predictable. She didn't. No, I'd stopped being blind. Nights became my strategy sessions. After Ethan slept, I'd review my folder, arrange evidence chronologically, highlight key dates. I drafted a calm but devastating email outlining what I knew. Unsent, just a template. I researched the school's code of conduct for teachers, especially clauses about relationships with parents or conflicts of interest. The more I read, the clearer it became. Mr. Dalton's behavior wasn't just immoral, it was professionally risky. If the school board saw the evidence, his contract could be revoked instantly. Claire's credibility as a volunteer would collapse too. But I also remembered my son. This was his school, his teacher, his mother. I couldn't simply scorch the earth. Whatever I did had to shield him as much as possible while still holding the adults accountable. So I began planning a reveal that would do just that. Not a screaming match in the hallway, not a viral social media post, but a moment where the truth would land publicly and unmistakably, at a time and place where they least expected it. Each day that passed, I played my role. The dutiful husband, the supportive father, the cooperative parent. Meanwhile, the folder on my laptop grew fatter, and my resolve hardened. They thought I didn't know. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, as if nothing in the world had changed. Ethan ate his cereal and chattered about the next rehearsal. Claire sipped her coffee, scrolling through her phone. To any outsider, we were a perfectly normal family. Inside my head, though, I was moving pieces on an invisible chessboard. Over the next 2 weeks, I became almost obsessive about patterns. Claire's movements, her texts, Mr. Dalton's updates. When she left for committee planning, I would note the time and watch her location quietly through our shared family tracker. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was building an unshakable record. My lawyer had told me, evidence first, emotions later. So I kept smiling, kept helping Ethan with his lines, kept volunteering to bring snacks to rehearsal. Every normal act became a cover for my private investigation. One afternoon, while picking Ethan up, I saw Claire and Mr. Dalton standing near the gym doors. They were laughing, heads bent close, hands brushing. It was a quick, subtle moment, the kind that would pass unnoticed by most. But to me, it was another thread in the tapestry. I snapped a photo from my phone, angled discreetly. That night, after Ethan was asleep, I laid everything out, screenshots, phone logs, photos, receipts. In the glow of my laptop, it looked like a crime board. 2 lives intersecting in secret. I wasn't angry now, I was deliberate. The anger had burned down to a cold, steady determination. I also began looking into Mr. Dalton's professional record. Publicly available school board minutes showed upcoming votes on staff contracts. Parent emails showed he'd solicited donations for new stage equipment. Claire had been one of the top donors. The picture was clear. They were entwined financially and socially. The more I dug, the more one idea crystallized. If I simply confronted them at home, Claire would deny, deflect, perhaps cry. Mr. Dalton would vanish behind the school's legal walls. My son would be caught in a crossfire. I needed a moment where neither could hide, where their choices were visible to others, yet where I still looked like the calm, protective parent. That's when the upcoming school board appreciation night caught my eye. It was scheduled 2 weeks away, a semi-formal evening with parents, staff, and local press invited. Mr. Dalton was slated to speak. Claire was on the volunteer committee. Ethan was even going to perform a small monologue as part of the student program. It was perfect. Too perfect. I spent the next days preparing as if for a legal case. My lawyer quietly drafted a letter for the school board outlining the relationship and attaching proof, but held it back at my request. We'd send it only after my public reveal, not before. I rehearsed my own words in my head during commutes. Not a shouting accusation, but a calm statement of facts that would leave no room for spin. I also made sure our finances were secured, joint accounts adjusted, important documents moved to a safe place. Claire noticed none of it. She was too busy texting and planning decorations for the board event. In the evenings, we played family. Ethan and I built Lego sets. Claire planned menus. Every now and then she'd look at me with a quizzical tilt of her head, as if sensing something different, but then she'd shrug it off. She had built her secret so carefully she couldn't imagine I'd cracked it. Meanwhile, I began to confide, carefully, in one trusted friend, Michael, who had known me since college. He agreed to attend the board night as my guest. He'd bring his camera, not to ambush anyone, but to have an independent record of whatever unfolded. The plan was taking shape. The tension, though, was real. Nights stretched long. Sometimes, I'd sit in the dark living room after everyone slept, staring at our family photos on the wall. We had built this life together. Vacations, holidays, birthdays. Was all of it a lie? Or had Claire simply drifted into something she couldn't resist? The questions hurt, but they also hardened my resolve. In the final week before the event, little cracks began to show. Claire grew more nervous, checking her phone, leaving rooms to take calls. She fussed over her outfit for the evening. Mr. Dalton sent out a cheery email thanking volunteers, CCing Claire directly. They were winding themselves tighter without realizing I was watching. The night before the event, as I tucked Ethan into bed, he told me how excited he was to perform his lines. I promised him I'd be right there, front row. In that moment, my anger shifted again, from betrayal to protection. This wasn't just about exposing two adults, it was about drawing a line around my son's world and saying, enough. After he slept, I opened the folder one last time. Everything was ready. The timeline, the photos, the receipts, the drafted letter. Michael texted to confirm he'd be at the event early. My lawyer was on standby. I closed the laptop, exhaled, and looked around the quiet house. Tomorrow, the masks would come off. Claire came into the room then, smiling distractedly, asking if I'd ironed my shirt for the event. I told her yes. She kissed my cheek lightly, almost absent-mindedly. I wondered if she had any idea that the world she'd built was about to shift under her feet. In bed, staring at the ceiling, I rehearsed. Again, calm voice, steady hands, facts first. No theatrics, no rage, just truth. When morning came, the house buzzed with preparation. Ethan in his school uniform, Claire in a new dress, me in my pressed suit. We piled into the car like any family heading to a school function. On the surface, we were perfect. Underneath, a storm was ready to break. Driving to the school, I caught our reflection in the rearview mirror. A smiling boy, a polished mother, a steady father. By nightfall, none of us would look the same. The school gym had been transformed. Soft lighting glowed over round tables dressed in white cloths. A banner stretched across the stage. Appreciation night, celebrating our educators. Parents milled about with coffee and hors d'oeuvres. Local reporters unpacked cameras near the back. Everything about the night was designed to look wholesome, proud, safe. I arrived early with Ethan and Michael. Ethan ran off backstage to join his classmates for last-minute rehearsal. Michael found a seat 2 rows back with his camera bag resting on his knees. I sat in the front row, center, the perfect vantage point. A murmur of anticipation filled the room as the program began. The principal gave a welcome speech. Volunteers were thanked. Applause rippled politely. Claire moved briskly between tables, checking decorations, her phone tucked into her palm like an extension of her hand. Mr. Dalton hovered near the stage, looking every inch the dedicated teacher. My heart hammered, but my face stayed neutral. Every detail of my plan replayed in my head. The evidence, the letter ready to send, Michael's camera. One last thing remained. Timing. I needed to choose the exact moment when my calm statement would cut through the noise. Ethan's turn arrived. He walked to the microphone, clutching his small script. My stomach clenched. This was the one pure thing tonight. His voice wavered at first, then grew steady as he delivered his monologue about bravery from a children's play. Parents chuckled and clapped at the right spots. He finished with a shy bow. My hands ached from clapping so hard. As Ethan left the stage, he glanced at me and smiled. That smile cemented my resolve. Next came Mr. Dalton. He adjusted the microphone, thanking parents and donors for supporting the drama program. His eyes swept over the audience, pausing for a fraction of a second on Claire. It was subtle, but to me it looked like a current of electricity between them. While he spoke, I took out my phone under the table. With a single swipe, I sent the pre-written email from my lawyer to the school board chair and the district HR office. The attached file contained every proof, dates, texts, photos. I hit send without a tremor. The evidence was now out of my hands. When the applause ended, the principal invited volunteers to the stage for recognition. Claire stepped up with a smile, standing just a few feet from Mr. Dalton. Parents clapped politely. A photographer raised a camera for a group shot. That was the moment I had rehearsed for. I stood slowly, buttoned my jacket, and walked to the microphone. My voice sounded steady, almost quiet, but the room hushed as soon as I began. Good evening. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm Ethan's father. Before we continue celebrating our educators tonight, I have something important to say. Heads turned. Claire's smile froze. Mr. Dalton blinked. I believe in teachers. I believe in honesty. But when a teacher crosses a line with a parent, when that line is hidden and affects a child, it stops being private. It becomes a community matter. Tonight, I've sent documentation of an inappropriate relationship between my wife, Claire Carter, and Mr. Dalton to the school board. A ripple of gasps moved through the gym like a physical wave. Chairs squeaked. Someone's coffee cup clattered. To the floor. I held the microphone lightly. This isn't about vengeance. It's about accountability and protecting my son. The board will review the evidence. For now, I'm stepping back so my boy can finish his evening with dignity. I placed the microphone back on the stand. The silence was total except for the whir of a camera shutter. Michael's camera. Claire's face had drained of color. Mr. Dalton's jaw worked soundlessly. Parents whispered. The principal stammered something about taking a short break. I turned, walked calmly down the aisle, and out of the gym into the cool night air. My heart was racing, but my steps were steady. Inside, the life we had been pretending to live was cracking open. Outside, for the first time in weeks, I could breathe. The storm had broken. What came next would be Act 3. The gym doors shut behind me with a heavy thud. Outside, the night was cool, almost gentle, a sharp contrast to the chaos I'd just ignited inside. I could hear muffled voices, hurried footsteps, the squeak of chairs. For a moment, I just stood there, inhaling the night air. I'd held my composure long enough to get the words out. Now the adrenaline was wearing off and a hollow ache settled in my chest. But I wasn't running. This wasn't about storming off in anger. I wanted clarity, not drama. So I walked a slow circle around the school courtyard, giving them a few minutes to absorb the shock. When I came back through the side entrance, the atmosphere inside had shifted completely. Parents huddled in small groups whispering. Some glanced at me. Others looked away awkwardly. The principal stood stiffly at the edge of the stage, phone pressed to his ear. Mr. Dalton had vanished from the microphone. Claire sat in a chair off to the side, hands clasped in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. Ethan, thank God, had been led to the art room by a counselor, away from the noise. I approached Claire. My voice stayed calm but firm. We need to talk, now. She lifted her head slowly. Mascara smudged beneath her eyes, the face of someone caught without a script. Daniel, please, she whispered, not here, not like this. Here is exactly where this ends, I replied, in the same place you chose to risk our sons. Trust. Mr. Dalton reappeared near the stage exit, jacket over his arm, face pale. "Mr. Carter," he began, but I cut him off with a raised hand. "No. You'll speak to the board and to your lawyer, not to me. Right now, you stay away from my family." A security guard had arrived and hovered discreetly nearby. The principal looked from me to Dalton to Claire, unsure what to do. "We'll take a short intermission," she announced shakily into the mic. "Parents, please remain calm while staff escort the children back to their classrooms." I guided Claire into an empty conference room adjacent to the gym. She hesitated, but followed. The door clicked shut. The room smelled of dry erase markers and carpet cleaner. A stack of colorful flyers about the book fair lay on the table, bizarrely normal. I took a seat opposite her. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I simply looked at her, waiting. She twisted her fingers together, then finally whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." My voice stayed even. "You knew exactly how far it went. You knew he was Ethan's teacher. You knew this would come out eventually. You still chose secrecy." She flinched but said nothing. "For months," I continued quietly, "I thought I was imagining things. The late meetings, the cryptic texts, the way you lit up when his name came up. Then I saw the photos. I read the messages. You didn't just betray me, Claire. You endangered our son's trust in adults." She started, but stopped again. "Don't explain to me. Explain to yourself. Explain to the board. I'm done carrying your secret." She covered her face with her hands. "Please, don't destroy me publicly. Don't destroy Ethan's life." I leaned back. "That's why I spoke carefully. I didn't name him as Ethan's teacher. I said a parent and a teacher. The board will see the evidence privately, but the community needed to know a boundary was crossed. I protected our son as much as I could." She lowered her hands slowly, eyes red. "What happens now?" "That depends on you. I filed for temporary separation. I've asked my lawyer to arrange custody so Ethan stays with me for now. You'll have supervised visits until the board finishes their investigation." She stared at the table, absorbing each word. The power dynamic had flipped completely. For years, she'd mocked my caution, my patience. Now, my preparation. The quiet gathering of evidence, the calm delivery, had left her no room to maneuver. The door opened slightly. Michael poked his head in. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Yeah," I said. "We're done here." He nodded and withdrew. I stood. "Claire, you need to go home tonight. I'll bring Ethan later after he's settled. Pack a bag. My attorney will contact you in the morning." She looked up at me, eyes brimming. "Daniel, I'm sorry." "I know," I said. "But sorry doesn't erase choices." I left the conference room and walked back into the gym. The staff had corralled the children into a classroom trying to keep the evening going. Parents avoided my eyes. Some gave small nods of support. Others whispered behind hands. I didn't care. My only focus was Ethan. I found him coloring at a table with two counselors. He looked up. "Dad, what's going on?" I crouched down, meeting his eyes. "Hey, buddy, the play's taking a break. We're gonna head home, okay?" He frowned slightly but nodded. "Okay." We gathered his bag and walked out to the car. Reporters' cameras flashed from across the parking lot. I kept my head high, shielding Ethan with my arm as we moved past them. The night air felt heavy but clean, like a storm had passed. In the car, Ethan was quiet. Finally, he asked, "Did Mom do something bad?" My throat tightened. "Mom made a mistake, buddy. Grown-ups make mistakes sometimes. But you're safe, and I'm here. That's what matters." He nodded and looked out the window at the school fading behind us. I drove in silence, my mind racing with everything that still lay ahead. Lawyers, custody, therapy. But beneath it all, there was a strange calm. For the first time in months, the truth wasn't a secret sitting in my stomach. It was out, acknowledged, and being dealt with. That night, after tucking Ethan into bed at Michael's house, I sat alone on the porch. The city hummed softly in the distance. My phone buzzed with emails from the district confirming receipt of my evidence. Another from my lawyer outlining next steps. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't the ending of a marriage I had wanted, but it was the start of honesty. I had chosen my son's dignity over my own humiliation. I had exposed a breach of trust without losing control. Tomorrow would bring fallout. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt free. It's been 6 months since that night at the school gym. The first few weeks after the reveal were a blur of paperwork, counseling sessions for Ethan, meetings with lawyers, and tense court dates. The headlines faded quickly, but the impact on our small community lingered. Parents whispered at pickup. Teachers walked on eggshells. I went from being the quiet dad who handled the snack schedule to the man who'd pulled the curtain. Back on a scandal, Mr. Dalton was placed on immediate administrative leave the next morning. By the end of the month, the school board terminated his contract. The district forwarded my evidence to the licensing board. Last I heard, he's under investigation and unlikely to teach again. Claire resigned from the PTA and, after the separation, was finalized, moved into a small apartment across town. She sees Ethan twice a week under a temporary custody arrangement. Those first few visits were painful. For her, for Ethan, for me. But slowly, boundaries have settled in. Our son knows he's safe, and that's what matters most. The legal process, while exhausting, taught me something I hadn't expected. How much strength lives in preparation, patience, and clarity. I never raised my voice in court. I didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. The judge even commented on how measured my filings were. All those late nights quietly documenting, saving messages, and meeting my lawyer had given me control of the narrative. Not to humiliate Claire, but to protect Ethan and my own integrity. In the weeks that followed, I focused on creating a new normal for my son. We built small rituals: Saturday pancakes, evening walks, reading at night. His grades dipped for a while, then began to climb back up. His teacher this semester is a kind, older woman who's earned his trust. Watching him regain his sense of stability has been the most important work of my life. I've also rebuilt my own life in quiet ways. I joined a support group for single parents. At first, I sat in the back, listening. Eventually, I began sharing my story. I was surprised to see how many others had faced betrayal. Different details, same ache. Speaking it aloud helped me let go of the shame. It wasn't my fault. I had loved, supported, and stayed honest. The betrayal belonged to someone else. People sometimes ask if I regret making the confrontation public. The answer is complicated. Part of me wishes Ethan had been spared any hint of scandal, but the alternative, to stay silent, to let a teacher who abused his position continue unchecked, would have been worse. Secrecy protects the wrong people. In exposing the truth, I showed my son that integrity matters, even when it's uncomfortable. Claire and I communicate now through a co-parenting app. Our messages are brief, factual. She has apologized several times. I've accepted her words, but keep my boundaries. Forgiveness, I've learned, is not the same as reconciliation. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, a way of releasing poison from your own hands. Reconciliation requires trust, and that has to be rebuilt, if at all, over years. Financially, I'm in a stronger place than I expected. During the marriage, I'd been the more cautious one with money. After the separation, that discipline paid off. I refinanced the house into my own name and kept my retirement intact. My lawyer called it a quiet victory. To me, it felt like simply reclaiming the life I'd already built. Sometimes, late at night after Ethan's asleep, I sit on the porch with a mug of tea and think about the version of my life I believed in: a long marriage, a shared home, watching our son grow up together. That life is gone, but I'm still here, and so is my son. And in a strange way, we're closer now. Honesty has a cost, but it also clears space for something real. Last month, Ethan performed in another school play, a small class production of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This time, I sat in the front row, just another dad in the audience. He scanned the crowd until he saw me and waved. My heart ached, but it also swelled with pride. We'd come through a storm, and he was still standing on his stage, unafraid. After the show, parents came up quietly to shake my hand. Some said nothing, just a nod of respect. Others whispered thank yous for having the courage to speak up. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a father who'd done what needed to be done. Looking back, I realized the real revenge wasn't the public exposure or the legal victory. The real revenge, if you can even call it that, was living in truth, protecting my son, and walking away from a toxic situation with dignity intact. In a story built on betrayal, integrity became my counter-move. There are still rough days. Ethan sometimes asks hard questions. Claire sometimes tries to bend the custody terms. But each time, I return to the lesson I want my son to carry forward. When people show you who they are, believe them. And when life cracks open, you can choose to react with rage or with clarity. Clarity won't undo the pain, but it will light the path out. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day I'll date again. Maybe I'll remain single, focusing on Ethan and my own growth. Either way, I'm no longer living a double life built on someone else's secret. My home feels lighter, my mornings quieter, my conscience clear. So, when I tell this story now, it isn't with bitterness. It's with the steady voice of someone who's been through fire and come out standing. At my son's school play, I learned my wife's affair was with his teacher. It shattered a picture I thought was permanent. But it also gave me a chance to show my son, and myself, what integrity really looks like when it's tested. And that, more than anything, is the ending I can live with.